Sorry. I know. So we can just chat because we have to wait for people to come on.
Okay.
So the fact is that we're going to be talking about portion distortion.
We sure
completely made up term. Very excited about it, I think.
It's somewhere. It's probably on the internet.
Hopefully it's on the internet somewhere. Random snacks.
Hopefully not copyrighted.
Hopefully not copyrighted. Exactly. And then we'll get started. So, hello. Welcome, everybody. My name is Nicole. I'm the social media manager here. And I am with Alyssa Labrecque, a clinical dietitian at Leahy Hospital and Medical Center. It is Nutrition Month. You've got your button.
I got my button.
Talking about nutritional food and common mistakes that people actually make when trying to portion out their foods or create healthy snacks, or just in terms of reading food labels and how complicated it can be. We're going to talk about all of those things, how we can sort of make our snacks healthy and eat them better, how you serve your food could also be leading to those common mistakes, and just how to do better at it. So let's get started.
Sounds good.
The term portion distortion, we kind of came up with it in terms of planning this whole thing.
Yep.
What are some easy mistakes that people make when it comes to portioning their food out?
Sure. So a lot of times people look at the food label and then ignore the size that the nutrition facts are based on and use things like their normal bowls to portion things out. A lot of times people look for deals out in restaurants. They try to get their most bang for their buck. So if something's advertised as 3 courses for $9.99, that might be far more of a portion than they need, but they feel value from it. And that's what a lot of the marketing tools use to get people to buy their products that might not be healthy. The other thing is that we often eat singular food group items, meaning that everyone who says I have pasta's the main dish with maybe a little sauce with some meat in it. Mm-hmm. And that gets you into trouble where you overportion the pasta.
Okay. Right, so if pasta is your main meal,
you
could end up eating
way more of it than you should. Right.
I'll say that I'm actually guilty of this, or at least when I'm going to blame my boyfriend for this, that when we're cooking, he'll sort of just pour the whole box in.
Yeah.
And sure, we'll have leftovers, but that also allows us to eat. We have plenty, so we can eat as much as we want, and then you're totally overportioning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, It's crazy. And let's go back to talking. I want to talk about plates for a second, but I also want to go back to deals. I think deals also comes not just with at a restaurant, but maybe with family size items at the store, or something that I also think is very deceiving. When you take a bag of chips and you take a giant bag of chips and then you open it and it's like half the bag.
Yeah, right.
Like, okay, so then I could probably eat more because there's less of what I thought there was going to be. Do you think that also was a misconception?
That's definitely a misconception, and also often family size boxes are less expensive, and so you end up reaching into that box for whatever it is, or that bag for the chips, versus something that might be individually portioned might be a little more expensive. So people will say, well, I'm not going to buy the individual bags of chips, I'm just going to take that big bag. But how many times, if you walk by it every time it's on the counter and take a handful or two out of the bag, they're going to end up overeating.
Right. I think my biggest thing is I just eliminate things from my pantry because I'm probably going to put my hand in there more times than I should for the serving size that I'm actually supposed to have.
Definitely.
So, okay, good. I'm glad I'm not alone.
No, definitely not alone. These are very common things.
Another thing that you had mentioned before we were getting started was that plates are now sort of changing. I think there's more of a modern look of a plate.
Yeah.
And that means that people might put more food on their plate. So this is like old school plate, or maybe classic china.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. And so you can tell that the yellow section is sort of where people would probably want to put their food because of the decorations on the side that are sort of limiting how much food you should put on the plate versus the plates that I have in my house, which are bigger than this plate as well, but then they're just completely white. So you would want to fill this whole plate. That's like twice the amount of food.
Absolutely. And even just having a more steep lip on this one allows you to kind of keep your portions smaller. Some of the ones, your grandmother might have the plate that has the physical flat rim around it. But a good rule of thumb is to keep it to about the size of your hand span.
Okay.
When you're trying to plate food. So that's always a helpful tip.
I did not know that.
Even on this plate, you've got a lot more dead space there when you use kind of that rule of thumb.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because I feel like this type of plate is more popular.
Absolutely.
Or even like a square plate, but still there's no decorative edge.
Right.
And I think that will lead to people probably eating more food.
My husband does it all the time.
Excellent. All right,
no white
great.
Space.
No white space. One of the other things is you always hear everything in moderation.
Right.
Do you think that food labels are helping with that or hindering that golden rule?
So, at the end of the day, companies are trying to make their profits. So they are using portion sizes to make their label appear to be a certain way to cater to a certain type of person. You know, if something they want it low calorie, the portion size gets smaller so that they can advertise that low calorie. The good news is that the Food Drug Administration has issued a revamp for the food label. So I think we're getting closer towards at least being more informed as consumers. So by the end of 2021, and some of the labels are already starting to change, food labels have to have serving size physically larger, calories physically larger, and the serving sizes need to be more realistic for the population.
Great. I guess a question then would be, if they're going to make it a little bit easier to read, is it going to be easier to interpret what's on the food label?
The information's still going to be the same. The hope is that you're interpreting it a little bit better when you know where to look. You know, we're all drawn to the shiny object, so the bigger calorie is going to make you pay more attention to it inherently. But certainly that's one of the skills that we as dietitians always educate people on, how to try to interpret what they're seeing on the label. So the first stop is looking, the second stop is interpreting.
Right. Do people know how to read a food label?
Not really. Well, the problem is there's tons of information.
Right.
And depending on what your goal is or what you have in mind to look at, you might be paying attention to different things. So if we took this soup, for example, right? Per serving, how many calories?
So per serving is 70 calories.
Sure.
That does not sound like a lot of calories.
No, and so you go, oh, this is great. Now, if you had heart disease and needed to worry about the sodium content or salt content, you may or may not choose to look at the sodium because of the calories are so appealing. So in one serving, how much sodium is there?
In one serving, there's 610 milligrams of sodium.
Absolutely. Now
That sounds like a lot of sodium.
It is a lot of sodium. That would be considered a high sodium food. Now, let's go back up to the top. How much is a serving?
A serving is a cup.
A cup. And how many cups are in here?
2.
Right. So now you're going to have to double that sodium.
She just made me do math on live
TV. We're getting crazy here.
I got nervous.
But if you didn't need to do math, you could say there's 2 servings per container.
Right.
So that information is there for you. And then...
Now there's 1,390 milligrams of sodium in this whole can.
Yep.
Because the can is 2 servings.
Yep. And
I would probably eat the can.
Absolutely. Most people would. And so this is more than half of your sodium for the day.
How much sodium should you be, like a healthy person?
So a person without chronic disease, we aim for around 2,300 milligrams as a general rule. So you're already halfway there, maybe even a little bit more.
And if this is for lunch, then who knows? Bacon, eggs.
Yeah.
You've already had a lot
of people say they're having, this with some potato chips on the side.
Right.
Then you've got more. So it adds up really quickly.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing the math or paying attention to the serving size, you might be consuming far more than you think, even if you're saying, well, I'm doing the educated thing and I'm looking at the food label. Not knowing what to do with that information can lead you to trouble.
Because let's say someone with diabetes, maybe they should be looking at the sugars or the carbohydrates.
Right, absolutely.
So everything sort of becomes a rabbit hole of what you really should be looking at and how you should be interpreting it.
Exactly. And that might look different for everybody, depending on diabetes, heart disease, weight loss, whatever your goal is or your chronic disease may be, kind of steers you through the food label of where you need to pay the most attention. So it can be a lot. It's overwhelming.
So the soup is actually one of our 3 common mistake foods that people will make. So the 3 common mistakes people might make with these foods. And we'll start with soup. We're not going to make a mess. So we've decided that we're going to use it with water instead. But you said that we should really be having a cup of soup.
So it's not necessarily that we can't have this whole can. In this instance, we should because we know the salt.
The sodium, yeah.
So to be clear, just because the serving size is 1 cup doesn't mean you can't have more than that of a particular food. In this case, because of the salt, we're going to try to stick there.
Okay.
So a lot of people will use, a standard bowl, that they can, that has some pretty, high content to it. So if we had, this is the equivalent roughly of what's in this can of soup. So if this is a cup and you poured that into your bowl, we'll do a little extra because who eats a can of soup?
I would not be able to drink that.
Not appealing.
Eat it. I wouldn't be able to eat it.
Not
it looks
appealing.
Like nothing.
Not appealing at all. That looks like a sad bowl of empty soup.
Even if it's just water.
Even if it's just water. It still looks extra sad. But then if you took your bowl and you changed it physically to a smaller bowl, that same about cup of soup looks a lot better. Now people are still going to say to me, that is not lunch.
Right.
And I agree with you. I really love food. This would make me very sad.
Yeah.
But the point is, the more that you stick to the portion sizes and vary your diet, the better off you'll be across the board. So if you took this more appropriate serving of soup and you added something like hummus and carrots, or even just half a sandwich, that's far more appealing. I would say, oh, okay, I could be full on that without over-consuming any one food item. And that's how you kind of can take the serving size and apply it.
Okay, great. Yeah. So what we have here, we have some broccoli, we have some hummus, some carrots. So not only maybe just having like a giant pile of one vegetable, but trying different types.
Definitely.
Varying it up. Yep. Having fun with what you get. Yes. Plus it's going to get your serving sizes in, I think, for your vegetables.
Exactly. And the more that you vary your diet, obviously the more vitamins, minerals, antioxidants you're introducing into your body.
Right.
So definitely too much of anything is always going to be problematic, no matter how healthy the food item is.
Right.
So if you had a mound of broccoli, that'd probably be too much broccoli. But mixing it up with the carrots, it's always going to be a little bit more beneficial.
Great. Yeah. Something, again, I think this is an elimination food for me. I just had to get it out of the pantry because I know myself. Cereal. This is actually probably, I would need like 8 of these, I think, for breakfast.
Yes, definitely.
I don't think that I'm alone when I would have a bowl of cereal.
Breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I love cereal.
Definitely for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But also, I would go back for another bowl.
Yes. Yep.
So let's talk about cereal and the common mistakes that people make.
So if you have that same size bowl, which a lot of us do, again.
Probably bigger.
Potentially bigger. You could easily fill that more than once. So a serving size for this particular cereal was 3/4 of a cup. Again, do I think you need to eat 3/4 of a cup of cereal? Absolutely not. That would make me very sad. But if you, again, utilize those smaller bowls and you take something that's a lot closer to that serving size and you add some other foods to it, you've got some low-fat milk in there or your milk alternative, some fruit, and a hard-boiled egg. Now this looks like a complete meal. So now you're getting the added benefits of the fiber from the fruit and the cereal, the protein from the milk and the egg, and you have a far more balanced meal with a more appropriate serving size.
What would be your suggestion? I'm throwing this at you, and maybe your answer would be don't do this at all. There are some cereals, let's say, take regular Cheerios. So not the Honey Nut Cheerios, or like regular cornflakes, not like the fancy cornflakes. And I've known people to put sugar on them because they don't have the added sugar.
Okay.
And you're like, I'm horrified.
I'm sure I did that with Rice Krispies as a kid.
Right, the plain Rice Krispies.
Yeah. I'm like, Mom, how'd you let me do that?
Exactly. I know. I think the things that we were doing as a child. But so would you say maybe just get not so much a sugary cereal, but maybe something a little bit more appealing as opposed to that plainer cereal where people might want to add on and they might not be able to control, just kind of dumping the sugar on. I don't know if anybody else does this. I did this definitely as a kid, and
that's
I'm
a
embarrassed
really
to say.
good question. My philosophy personally is that I would be so much more happy with a bowl this size of a cereal that I enjoy than a cereal that I'm going to add boatloads of sugar to that I know isn't good for me, and potentially eat more of that cereal because I'm not satisfied. So the other component to acknowledging serving sizes is that we're not saying you can't have that giant bowl of cereal. We're saying enjoy this smaller portion, also enjoy other things, and that way you don't feel deprived, you have satiety, you enjoy the food that you're eating. So everything can fit for sure.
Great.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Oh, thank you. And then our third thing was snacks. Just throughout the day, I find that it's probably better to, rather than eat 3 meals, I've always been told, instead of eating 3 square meals, you should snack during the day. Obviously, healthy snacks, small portions, and that should help you to feel satiated through the day. But the question is, what is a healthy size snack?
Definitely. So this is the place that I spend a lot of time educating people, because a lot of people think a snack has to be one single food, right? So I'm going to snack on almonds. I'm going to snack on blackberries. And again, that variety is what you're missing. So you're always more apt to overconsume when you're only having one single item. So when I educate my patients, I teach them to build your snacks like a mini meal. So it should have variety. It should have components from different food groups. And that's how I help them use portion control there. So I could sit down and eat this at my desk while I'm working on stuff and without blinking an eye. But really, so I use a few things. First, I use Tupperwares.
I would
often
cry if I was told that I had to put my almonds in that.
So almonds, a serving size is usually a small handful or about an ounce, okay? So if I told you this was your snack of almonds, depression immediately. But this amount of almonds, when you're adding it with other things, can give you the crunch, can give you the satisfaction without over-consuming. So what I usually tell people to do is vary up your snack by doing maybe a small portion of almonds. I have a string cheese here and then some fruit. So this is a little mini meal.
Right.
And it's giving you variety, it's giving you correct portion sizes, and probably a lot more satiation than this would end up giving you.
Right.
So,
or going back for the almonds and going back and going back.
And back. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is great.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm starving now.
It is lunchtime.
It is lunchtime. Do we have any questions?
No questions right now. No questions yet.
That's perfectly fine. You guys can leave your questions in the comments.
I do have one more thing.
Oh my God, please tell me.
So one of the biggest barriers for me as a clinical dietitian seeing people in the inpatient setting is that I don't get much face time with them. So I end up giving them an education and then sending them on their way when they're discharged. But we do have outpatient nutrition services with the clinical dietitians in our outpatient unit, full staff. And what I love about outpatient dietitian appointments is that you can build on your skills. So there's follow-up. So for me, teaching the food label and teaching portion sizes is limited to people who are sick in the hospital, who don't feel good, who would rather be doing anything but listen to me talk about nutrition. But that follow-up outpatient allows them to set goals with the dietitian, reevaluate, see where they're struggling, see what worked and what didn't. And we have that service here at Leahy. And we have a great staff of outpatient dietitians who, without them, the inpatient dietitians could only do so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, I think one of the things that we were discussing before is how eating healthy to some might seem like a very expensive process.
Yeah.
A very expensive lifestyle. But that's not really true anymore. And it doesn't really matter what zip code you're in or which community you're in or how much money you make. There's so many more opportunities and options for people. Yes. So it's really a matter of finding the variety and doing the research and going out and using the resources that are available, right?
Absolutely. The bottom line is it's not always easy to eat healthy. It does take work. It takes educating yourself, whether it be with a dietitian or on your own. But the matter of the fact is that the more processed foods are less expensive. We do know that is true. But there are some really great programs. SNAP, the food assistance program, is working with some urban farmers markets to allow people to get fresh produce and take SNAP for reimbursement. So that puts that excuse out the window. The other thing is that people say that they have canned vegetables because fresh go to waste and they're too expensive. But again, the reality of it is that frozen vegetables are significantly better for you because of the salt content. So they're lower in sodium and they're about the same price point and they don't go to waste. You keep them in the freezer. So there are definitely ways around it. You just have to be willing to look into it. Buying fresh ingredients that are in season versus out of season are going to be significantly less expensive.
What is in season right now?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
I am.
What's in season? Stone fruits in the winter? I citrus
Asparagus,
fruits.
citrus.
Okay.
Fruits are in season in the winter. Certainly apples in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
You can get local apples. Bananas are usually one of the most inexpensive fruits all year round.
That is true. They're always so cheap.
Yep. So if you tell me you can't afford fresh fruit, you can afford a stack of bananas that are 89 cents a pound.
And why is it, and I don't know if this is just something that I don't know, but why is there so much salt in canned vegetables? Is it to preserve it?
Absolutely. Preservation for the canned vegetables and the canned products. In some of the frozen prepared meals or, pre-processed meals that people eat, the ingredients just aren't that great. And so salt makes things taste better.
Mm-hmm.
So they add salt to make their product more desirable. Imagine that lean cuisine in the freezer, if you didn't add the salt to it, now you're taking this product that you probably don't want to eat anyway and making it not taste as good. So people add the salt so they can say, well, I'm having this healthy meal and it's good, not great, but it's good enough,
right.
So people will buy it.
And one of the other things, excuse me, that I think people don't take advantage of is seasoning.
Yes,
so
definitely.
It doesn't need to be spicy. It doesn't need to be salty.
Right.
But there are so many different types of seasonings and spices that people can put on their food
to make it super flavorful. Yeah.
What are your favorite kinds?
So my big thing that I tell people is don't buy the lemon pepper seasoning shaker.
Okay.
Take some lemon, take some pepper, and cook anything with lemon and pepper. Now it's really low in salt, tons of flavor. I love also using vinegars because they mimic the taste of salt, and there's so many different varieties now. You're cooking Italian, you can throw some balsamic on. If you want to cook an Asian dish but you don't want the Asian condiments that are high in sodium, they have rice wine vinegar, and that mimics kind of that flavor.
Rice wine vinegar.
Yeah. So there's so many different options to play around with, and part of the excitement about food and why I love it so much is that you can be so creative, and it doesn't have to be unhealthy to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I think that pretty much sums it all up. We have all of these snacks that we're now going to eat in portioned sizes. But my name is Nicole. This is Alyssa Labrecque. She is a clinical dietitian with Leahy Hospital and Medical Center in the
inpatient.
Yep. So if you have any questions, please be sure to reach out to our nutritional services line. And you can have fun in the grocery store, I think. And the other thing is, last thing I will say is shop on the outside, right?
Usually that's always a good idea. And also just take time. Make a point to say, I'm going to take a little extra time today in the grocery store, do a little more investigating, and that way it's quicker the next time you go in.
Great. I hope that this was helpful for folks that were watching. We're going to post this on YouTube as well, and we'll post some clips on Instagram. Make sure you follow us at Leahy Health. And have an amazing nutritional month. We're halfway through. We're more than halfway through.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to have some blackberries. All right. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.